A major aspect of the Horizon 2 initiative is protecting fresh water, our planet's most precious natural resource. Throughout the heartland, runoff and erosion from agricultural fields is contributing alarming levels of nutrients, mainly nitrogen and phosphorus, into our local rivers and streams. Those nutrients ultimately find their way to the Gulf of Mexico, where they are contributing to one of the largest hypoxic dead zones in the world. To better understand the connectivity of an entire watershed, ecologically and in the sense of community, we are following the flow of water from the Grand River in northern Missouri to the mouth of the mighty Mississippi. Along the way, we'll meet interesting people and explore important places that expose the enormous importance of clean, healthy water. Out here in the heartland, where agriculture drives rural economy, we are on the path to a future that not only produces food, but also renewable energy, ecological services, and improved wildlife habitats. I'm on a journey to tell the stories of Horizon 2, a climate-smart future for corn, soybean, livestock, and renewable natural gas production. I'm Brandon Butler, and this is Prairie Prophets. The Grand River originates in Iowa and flows about 200 miles to its confluence with the Missouri River just south of Brunswick, where we're starting to film today. Early settlers raved about this region and how it teemed with wildlife and the endless expanses of lush tallgrass prairie. Today, the Grand River is one of the most polluted rivers running through the heartland. Over the next 2 episodes of Prairie Prophets, we're going to follow the Grand River into the Missouri River, into the Mississippi River, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to be exploring the importance of these waterways, how economy is tied to them, but also how inputs of pollutants are causing detrimental problems throughout the entire course of this watershed. We'll end up in the Gulf of Mexico, where we explore the hypoxic zone and all the detrimental effects of the pollutants we're sending downstream to our neighbors in the south, and how keeping our agriculture lands in the Midwest covered all year can solve our runoff and erosion problems.
May 14th, 1804, the Lewis and Clark expedition started up the wide Missouri. It moved upstream through the last outposts of white man's civilization. And by October, the party had reached a point 50 miles north of modern-day Bismarck, North Dakota.
The landscape has changed dramatically since Lewis and Clark first encountered the Grand River in 1804. Both the Grand and the Missouri are now constrained by levees, and the prairies are gone. We're hitting the road to Columbia, where we meet up with Steve Schnarr from River Relief to learn how his organization works to care for the Missouri River. Steve, we're sitting here at Cooper's Landing, just south of Columbia, Missouri, right on the banks of the Missouri River. Such an incredible setting and beautiful view. I can understand why you devote so much of your time, your life and career to this river. Can you talk a little bit about what the Missouri River means to you?
I grew up in Chesterfield, Missouri, little suburb west of St. Louis, just right next to the Missouri River, and I had no idea that it existed. Like, I barely knew, you know. There wasn't good access, and I just didn't have the connection, you know. It wasn't until I moved away and checked out different places and came back to Missouri and landed here in Boone County, just right by the Missouri River, that it sort of opened up to me, and I understood what an amazing place this is. I mean, the Missouri River it's the longest river in North America, and it connects us, to the Rocky Mountains. It connects us to the Great Plains. All of that is coming through here. All that history, that amazing prehistory, and the stories that have grown up along this river, it's rich, and when you get out here, and this is a good spot, like we're outside of town, but it doesn't take long when you get on this river, maybe throw in a canoe and start paddling, and you just feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, and you're kind of in the middle of everywhere.
Clearly the river's changed a lot since Lewis and Clark made their way through with the levees and the channelizing of the river. But the core of it is still intact. The beauty of it is still here in the trees and the bluffs and the islands. But the water quality has changed. That's something that we're very interested in. And a lot more has changed as well, which is why your organization, River Relief, exists. Tell us, what is River Relief?
We're a nonprofit. We've been around for 21 years. We just really started from this understanding of this place, this river. What a big deal it is. And yet, most people don't really have a way to connect to it. They don't really necessarily feel like they're part of it, that the river's part of them. So we started out doing river cleanups and engaging volunteers, taking them out in boats to pick up trash along the river, that it's kind of an endless stream of garbage that just ends up in this river from every tributary that flows down. And it's kind of like the visual representation of some of those broader water quality issues that you're talking about that are invisible, that are part of the river now too.
And that's where establishing prairie along our riparian areas, along our rivers and streams and creeks can really benefit the water quality from here all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, throughout the entire watershed. And cover cropping our agriculture fields as well helps protect us from erosion and runoff. To gain a better understanding of how runoff and erosion are entering and affecting our water, I visit with a few conservation professionals from NRCS.
So this is what we call our SLAKE test, and so what it tests for is soil aggregate stability. So when we do this demonstration, we just drop them in, and we see what happens as time goes on, and you start to see pieces slake off and fall to the bottom. A lot of times this is going to get pretty cloudy in here because, and then air bubbles will start to come out. So what the water is trying to do is, as it surrounds that aggregate, it's trying to find air spaces, pore space. And it's kind of like a wood splitter, it's finding a path of least resistance to find those pores. But if it can't find them, it just starts chipping it away, and blowing it apart. And so on the healthier soil, it acts like a sponge because there's plenty of airspace in there. And so it just fills it, and the roots, the biological activity, the worms, all of that, roots give off exudates, worms have, slime that they give off as they crawl through. Exactly. And so those, in a healthier soil, they create what's been called glumalin. It's the glues that help hold the soil together.
Luke, what is the NRCS?
NRCS is Natural Resources Conservation Service. We are an agency within the Department of Agriculture, and we help private landowners address resource concerns, provide information. We have several programs that can help offset costs of implementing various practices to address resource concerns on their farms.
One of the problems that we notice is the erosion as farmers plant right up to the creek or riverbank. Are there programs in place to give alternative options to farmers and landowners in that situation?
Yep, so Riparian forest buffers is something we can do, is a practice we use. There are CRP programs that can help put in vegetated buffer strips, whether using grasses or trees as well, to try to reduce that amount of erosion, stream bank erosion as well. So there are several practices that we can use to address those.
When we take that unhealthy soil versus the healthy soil, when we rain on it, as those pore spaces collapse, like they did here when they break down and they collapse down in the bottom of the slake jar, here they just collapse on one another when we confine them to that space, and it just creates a seal.
Wow.
Kind of like mortar and concrete.
That's so simple, but so amazing.
Exactly. Nitrate and phosphorus runoff levels. You know, you can stick a nitrate strip into this water here, and the nitrate levels are down.
Wow.
As you know, okay, so we got 2 drops in this one because you know those nutrients have been captured and held by the biology in that soil.
When you go out and speak with farmers about cover crops, what's some of the pushback you get in terms of why they don't implement them?
I think a lot of the pushback is, you know, it won't work here. It won't work in my soils. And sometimes, depending on the makeup of that soil or the structure of that soil, it may take a little bit longer. I know, you know, from experience, my family's down in the bottoms, and we've plowed and we've tilled, and we still do, and we have a lot of varying soil types throughout a field. But you know, the biggest thing that I try to work with folks on is either planting a check strip or finding a portion of that field, you know, whether it be 10%, 20%, try to treat it just a little bit differently, knowing that we're gonna have to increase our management level a little bit, but just see what happens.
I think for folks like myself in a situation as a first-time farmer or first-time landowner, it can almost be overwhelming to try to get your mind around all the different opportunities that are there. But NRCS has a lot of options to help a new farmer, a new landowner. Can you talk about how someone like myself could come to your agency and receive assistance?
Yeah, Brandon. So you know, the biggest thing is you know, find your local office, get into the office, introduce yourself to the NRCS staff, get to know the local soil conservationist. Maybe there's a Missouri Department of Conservation wildlife biologist there, private lands conservationist, and let them know what you're trying to achieve.
Armed with a better scientific understanding of nutrients in our waterways, we take a turn to the south and pass through Jefferson City, Missouri's scenic state capital, located right on the banks of the Missouri River. We're heading to Hermann to explore why this river town continues to thrive while so many around it slowly disappear. We've stopped in Hermann to explore what makes this quaint little town in the Missouri River Valley flourish today, while others throughout the heartland are experiencing boarded up downtown squares and other economic challenges. What we've come away with is this town has been more susceptible to changing with the times. Boutiques and bistros, distilleries and wineries. In fact, 1/3 of all of Missouri's wine comes from Hermann. There's events and festivals and bed and breakfasts, campgrounds, and other infrastructure that brings people to this small community to enjoy themselves for a long weekend or a few days throughout the week. Inspired by the vibrance and the bustling economy of Hermann, we continue our journey east to St. Louis and the confluence of our nation's 2 longest rivers, the Missouri and Mississippi. We're standing at the confluence of America's two greatest rivers, the Mississippi River to my right, the Missouri River to my left. And while some may disagree, this is the end of the line for the Muddy Mo. Although this river brings more sediment into the Mississippi than vice versa, it is the Mississippi that carries the name to the Gulf of Mexico. However, that doesn't stop the nutrients in the Missouri River from continuing their journey on down to the Gulf as well. So earlier in the day, we were at the Grand River in Brunswick. All the nutrients running off of agriculture fields into the Grand River and hundreds of other streams, creeks, and rivers throughout the heartland end up right here to join with the Mississippi and continue their path to the Gulf of Mexico and one of the largest hypoxic zones in the world. From this point forward, we're going to follow the mighty Mississippi all the way to its mouth at Venice, Louisiana. We're going to explore communities and talk to individuals who can tell us more about the effects of runoff and erosion into this great river system. We're going to learn about the livelihood and lives of people reliant upon this river and how life could simply be better if we could limit the amount of pollution we're sending downstream. We're at the gateway to the west, here in St. Louis, standing in front of the Great Arch. When Lewis and Clark set off on their adventure to the Pacific from right here in St. Louis, what they first experienced in the Great Plains was an endless ocean of tall grass prairie. Today that prairie is all but gone, and the river has been channelized into a shipping canal that allows us to move goods from the Gulf of Mexico to points further north than here. Unfortunately, through that process, we've begun sending sediment downstream, along with heavy torrents of water in flood conditions. The Mississippi River actually drains from 32 states. That's 40% of all the drainage in the continental United States. With that water comes all the nutrients that have run off of agriculture fields and eroded from stream banks. It makes its way here to the Mississippi and continues on down to the Gulf of Mexico, where it perpetuates our problem of the hypoxic dead zone that we're going to experience later in the show. By restoring prairie in our riparian areas and along our waterways and instituting a robust cover cropping system, we can protect our water. We can have a cleaner ecosystem and keep those pollutants out of our river systems and out of the Gulf of Mexico. As we roll through the boot heel of southeast Missouri, we stop in Cape Girardeau to fuel up on some Cajun food and fill the truck with gas. We're on our way to Cairo, where we'll learn about the demise of a once bustling city at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers.
My name is Monica Smith, and I'm director of the Cairo Public Library, and I'm also over the Customs House Museum. I've been here a long time because my grandmother lived here, so I was here as a little girl, and then in 1979 we moved here, so for good. And I lived north of here in Pulaski County all my life, but spent many hours in Cairo.
What makes this town special?
The people. It's got some really good people. And if you have a problem, they're right there, so that's a lot of it. But we also have the library and the Customs House and beautiful homes and Magnolia Manor and some beautiful churches.
Cairo's known as a river town, the confluence of the Ohio and the Mississippi.
Right.
What comes with being a river town?
It provides a lot of jobs for a lot of people and has for many, many years. It's also neat to see people come down in kayaks and canoes and all kinds of stuff, traveling down the rivers, and they always stop in here And it's just something that you never get out of your blood.
There was a time in history when Cairo was supposed to be the size of St. Louis. What do you think stopped that from happening?
You know, I think a lot of it is there's no place to go. It's like an island. You can't go either side because you got rivers. You have to go north, and north floods. So I think that was a lot of it.
At the turn of the 20th century, the population of the town was around 15,000. Right. And today you're down to about 1,700.
Right.
What has caused that?
Part of it, a lot of it was the evacuation in 11. We lost a lot of people.
And why were people forced to evacuate in 11?
Because the river was at 62.5 foot, and they didn't know if it was going to stop there or not.
What do you hope the future looks like in Cairo?
Just hope we can hold on. You know, we don't have any tax base anymore because we don't have anybody here. And we were hoping for the port, but I don't know how that's going to work out. And then we need places for them to live, for those people to live, which we don't have. So I'm hoping they're a little progressive and try and find somebody who puts some housing in, because that's what we need.
Time has clearly not been kind to Cairo. For the sake of Monica and all others who hold this little river town in their hearts, one can only hope for new means of economic growth to emerge and breathe life back into the community. Perhaps those gains will come from new climate-smart commodities in agriculture.
Fresh water is like the new gold. You know, we spent a couple centuries chasing ourselves across the country looking for quick money, and that's kind of like in our culture, right? The gold rush mentality. The gold is here, like it's here, and it reflects what we're doing on our landscape. It all starts out in our backyards, and it's reflected here, and then the impacts that it has as far down as the Gulf of Mexico. You know, we've seen those. We've got to think about not just the impacts of what we do on our properties, but what happens downstream. It's part of caring for your land is caring for the water that leaves your land too.
We are halfway through our journey from the Grand River in northern Missouri to the Gulf of Mexico at Venice, Louisiana. It's clear so far that the complexities of the Mississippi River watershed are as vast as the landscape it drains. In each community we visit, signs of economic decay are evident. It saddens me to think we are leaving behind the people of these little cities and towns in lieu of cheaper, faster, easier gratification. America was built on the back of agriculture, and we still lean on the industry as a major contributor to our national GDP. If we aim to turn around the decline of our rural economy and keep alive the beauty of small-town living, then we have to find new and better ways to produce crops and livestock in this country. New horizons are emerging in agriculture, giving us hope for a more sustainable future in rural America. In part 2 of this quest for understanding, we visit historic Vicksburg and spend some time with scientists at LSU before completing our journey at the literal end of the road.